Today on the Able to Care podcast, I'm going to be talking about some elements of mindset that can really make a difference to how you cope with day-to-day challenges that you're encountering. So, hello and welcome to another episode of the Able to Care podcast. My name is Andy Baker and I'm your host. And today I'm going to be talking about some elements related to mindset that can really help people to overcome the challenges they have through their caring for others experience. So whether you are a paid or an unpaid caregiver, a teacher or a parent, all of those different roles can come with significant challenges and can feel like a real battle at times for many. And there is a lack of support and understanding out there sometimes, or tools of what people can do to allow them to cope with these difficult situations and these difficult circumstances that they might find themselves in. Now, recently I came across a bit of a tool that I'm going to talk to you about today that's going to kind of help to overcome. It's a different way of thinking and something that can remind ourselves on in those more difficult and challenging times. One of the things I try and get over in many of the different training sessions that I do, and one of the things when I'm doing coaching or mentoring for people, is to try and help them to get their mindset right. Whether it's building a business, whether it be supporting somebody with disabilities and challenges, whether it be looking after a loved one that's changing due to an illness, or whether it be managing difficult and challenging behaviors. All of those, we have to start with the principle of we have to look internally. We have to look at how we're going to cope with this, manage our own self-care, manage our emotional reactions to the situation. Because we can't control anything around us if we don't have good control over ourselves. But that is easier said than done. Most of us out there have some level of negative thought process, the inner opponent, the Mr. or Mrs. Negative that kind of sits on your shoulder, that kind of tells you that this is too hard, this is difficult, this is never going to work, you can't do this, that you're a failure, all the negative thoughts that we have. And it can be really difficult and overwhelming. Now, one thing just kind of worth referring to there is that inner voice, that negative that we have. And we all do seem to have it. It is there to protect you. It is there to try and keep you safe. Once upon a time, it would have told you to run away from the lion or the tiger, or don't go into that dark cave on your own because there could be something dangerous in there. And that actually made a lot of sense as far as it allowed us to survive as a species. The problem is we live in a society now where we're not going into dark caves and running away from predators. But this negative thought process is still there to protect us, but it tries to protect us from things that maybe aren't actually dangerous, as far as the fear of failure, the fear of rejection. Nothing's going to hurt you from being rejected, literally or physically, but it's the emotional harm that the brain still recognizes and tries to protect us through those things. Protecting yourself from not feeling good enough, protecting yourself from failure. These are all things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, as well as obviously cope with the significant stress of the world around us. And again, even when we're dealing with a very challenging situation or circumstance, or we're finding it really difficult to look after that person or that loved one, or we're feeling burnout, it is a case of that negative voice is kind of there to tell you this isn't good. Now, it's always worth bearing in mind that if your brain is telling you this isn't good, you shouldn't do this, you need to take a break, sometimes we do need to see where that voice is coming from. Is it actually true? Do we need to be taking a step back and looking after ourselves better? But sometimes it's there to protect us from things that aren't really overwhelming, that aren't really too hard. It just feels like they are. And when those days are bad and they're difficult, that voice can be really, really loud. So recently I came across a little bit of a tool which I think is really good for helping us to overcome those difficult thoughts and those difficult or battle that kind of Mr. Negative or that inner opponent, if you like. The benefits of that is that stress isn't always a bad thing. In fact, there's a wonderful TED talk that talks about stress not being a bad thing. In fact, as far as well-being is concerned, having a no stress life is obviously quite positive as far as well-being is concerned. But actually better is having a stressful life, but thinking that stress is a good thing, thinking that it actually is a challenge and something worth doing, and you feel invigorated by it. So people who experience stress and think it's a bad thing are the ones who suffer the worst as a result. It's an interesting TED Talk, and I may have to try and put a link in the bio to that. Imagine you wake up in the morning, you slightly oversleep your alarm, so that's it. You get up on the wrong side of the bed. It's suddenly a case of you go into the bathroom and the shower doesn't get warm very quickly, or somebody's used all the hot water. You then get out and get dry, and then you go to put a sock on and there's a hole in your sock. And then you go to leave the door and or you go to leave, or you've run out of coffee, for example. And then you get in the car and you're on the way to work and you're feeling stressed because you're a little bit late, and some horrible person pulls in front of you in traffic. And as you then continue your drive, you look to the sheep in the field and you're just thinking to yourself, I hate you. You get to just run around doing whatever you want, living a free life, whereas I have to go to work, or I have to do this thing, or I have to fulfill this task. Okay. So you're left feeling this overwhelm on the day. But let's say a different circumstance, and this time you get up and you oversleep the alarm a little bit, but it does mean that you had a really good sleep as a result of that. You maybe cut out some things, but you actually have quite a refreshing shower because there wasn't quite enough hot water. So actually you felt quite invigorated from the shower. You then went to put a sock and there's a hole in it. Well, that's quite good because it's reminded you need to buy some new socks, and you just thrown those away. They were getting a little bit old anyway. You then kind of trip up the doorstep, you run out of coffee, don't you? You run out of coffee, but that's quite nice because you end up going to the local Costa to pick something up, and you see an old friend that you haven't seen for ages, and you grab their number, and you're going to give them a call or contact them another time. As you're driving, you see somebody looking to pull out, and you slow down and you flash your lights to allow them to move in front of you. And as you look out to the side, you see the sheep playing in the field, and you're thinking to yourself, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that amazing? Isn't the world a wonderful place on your way to work? Now, in those two circumstances, kind of the events were all very, very similar. The big difference is the way that we perceive them and the way that our mindset was to those different circumstances. And when we're responding to those two different circumstances, it is very much a case of we might be able to choose or control how we respond or how we think in those two different circumstances. This is definitely easier said than done. And I promise you, this is nothing easy about this. But one thing I do try and get over to people is that habits sometimes take a while to build. And we often can get trapped in a habit of the negative thinking, the negative thought cycle, or listening to the negative voice. And actually, it's going to take us a while to learn how to listen to our positive voice, how to focus on the positive side of things. And it's a muscle we have to work like any other. So you've only ever worked your left arm out at the gym, then you go to your right arm, you may feel really weak, but it's going to take a while to get there. And if you only did your right arm for a while, the left arm would get weaker. And that's exactly the same with, if you're so used to listening to your negative voice, it becomes really strong and really powerful and you can focus on it. But when you start listening to your positive voice and you shift that mindset, this gets quieter and quieter over time. Doesn't go away, never goes away completely, but it softens down, it quietens down, and it's easier to shout over it. So let's go into the tool that I came across that some of you may find helpful. Now, when many of us are lost, many of you will have heard of GPS, Global Positioning System, in your car that allows you to find where you need to be, allows you to get some direction, allows you to feel comfortable driving, and you feel less stressed as a result of that. Well, this is an acronym that I came across on some business mentoring sessions and some personal development sessions called exactly that, GPS. But the GPS doesn't stand for Global Positioning System. Now we're talking about what's called gratitude, perspective, and service. And the idea with the GPS system is that any situation or challenge that we're dealing with, we can actually start to use the GPS principle to help us to reframe and change our mindset towards it. So let's jump into that a little bit. Starting off, gratitude. Many of you will have heard of how beneficial gratitude can be to shifting your mindset. Whether some of you may keep a gratitude journal, for instance, where every evening you write down something that you are grateful for and you go to bed with that. Or you might do it in the morning where you wake up and you write down something that you are grateful for, or 1, 2, 3 things. Now, what could you be grateful for? No matter what is going on in your life, there will be some things that are actually positive. one of the things to think about, and I actually heard this on a TikTok video or something like that. You don't need to go back that far in time before having a hot shower was something that was genuinely a novelty and something that nobody ever had. It was a bath in the front room for most people. And you really don't need to go back that far. Now we take for granted that every morning we get up and we get in a warm shower. I also gave the example earlier about a cold shower, but hopefully it was a warm shower for you this morning. But maybe it's a case of just being able to boil a kettle and have a coffee. Anything along those lines could be something we could be really grateful for. The fact that you woke up in a bed with covers, the fact that you've got a roof over your head, the fact that you're laying next to somebody who supports you and loves you, the fact that you've got children in the other room, okay, whatever it is, the fact that you've got trousers to put on. It could be minor. It doesn't need to be huge, but it could be just something in your life that you should or can be grateful for. Just to go, yeah, I have that. I may not have everything right, but I've got that that's good. That can help us by finding something in our lives that we can be grateful for. That can help us to shift our mindset a little bit, to focus on the positive things in our life rather than negative things. And one of the principles, although I'm a kind of a no woo-woo kind of person, there is an element or part of the brain called reticular formation that the things that we think about are the things that we then are more likely to notice. So if we're noticing or thinking about the things we're grateful for, we're more likely to notice the things that we're grateful for. We're more likely to notice good things in our life. So that's gratitude. Next is perspective. Now, many of us really don't like it when somebody else points us out that we should put things in perspective. Think about the grand scheme of things. Life, there's starving children out there or there's worse things out there. So try and put some perspective on things. But it can be very difficult when it feels important to you in your world. And sometimes things can feel really overwhelming, but there is certain tricks that we can do to kind of reduce the stress a little bit or help us to kind of put a different perspective on it. One of the things is kind of within the worry trap principle is, will this still bother you in 6 months' time? Will this thing that's upsetting you now still be a thing, still be an issue in 6 months' time? And most of the time, many of the things that we actually worry about, feel stressed about, feel upset about, they're not the things that we're even thinking about. They're no longer an issue in 6 months' time. And yet how much power do we give to them now? They're not really something that's going to impact massively our life. In 6 months' time, we may not even remember it. So that's quite a useful thing and if you're struggling with 6 months, go 5 years. In 5 years' time, will this thing still matter to me? Will it really affect me? So something that feels overwhelming now, when you put it into perspective of, 5 years' time, it probably won't be painful. I'll probably be okay. I probably will have recovered from it, or I will have overcome it, or whatever it is. Well, suddenly it's not as big as you think it is when you put it into the grand scheme of your life. That doesn't mean it isn't important now, but sometimes it's a case of, can I control this? Can I change this? And how will I feel about it in that time in the future? We can also change our perspectives that life is full of peaks and troughs. I know people often want to attribute things to agency. I'm not a big fan of many kind of woo-woo principles and stuff as far as, everything happens for a reason or karma and things like that. Life just has ups and downs. And sometimes you can be up and sometimes you can be down. It's peaks and troughs. But after a trough usually comes a peak. Now, after a peak usually comes a trough. And we all know that we've been at that high point and something then bad happens. But we never know how those peaks and troughs are going to come. But when we're at our lowest, when we're at our worst, we tend to think how bad it's going to be. It's like, how bad is that pain going to feel? But a good example is like physical pain. When you first experience something painful, let's say you stub your toe, okay, as an example. When you're a kid, all kids, when they stub their toe, they can't imagine anything worse. And they can't imagine this pain they're experiencing in this moment. They can't imagine it ever getting better. And now as an adult, when you stub your toe, it sucks. It really sucks. But you know the pain will go away after a short time. It will get better. It won't get worse. And that's the thing with many emotional pains. Often because we've never experienced it before sometimes, we think this is never going to get better. I can never imagine myself not feeling like this. Whereas actually, just like the stubbed toe, there will be a time where it doesn't feel as painful and it will get better. The other thing is that when we're looking at the challenges and the difficult times, we can actually change our perspectives. There could be something good coming from this. And we'll go move on to service in a second, but there's other things that are good as well. That when I go through challenges, that is an opportunity for me to grow and improve and learn a new skill. If I went into a gym and only picked up the lightest weights and just went, oh, these are easy, these are what I could do, I would never develop. I would never get stronger. I'd never learn new skills or abilities. Instead, if I go into a gym and find something that challenges me, then straight away I can then develop into that. I can grow into it. I can get better at it. And that's exactly the same as life. Sometimes when we're going through a pain, when we're going through a challenge, we have to learn new skills or new abilities to be able to overcome this, which means we come out the other side as a better person than before we went in. We grow from that. I know they sort of say, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And yes and no, there is some circumstances that obviously that doesn't work as far as severe trauma and things like that's concerned. There's always an exception to every rule. But sometimes when we are just going through a difficult time, we can then take something positive from it, and that I'm going to grow from this. I'm going to overcome this. And when I do, I'm going to be stronger as a result of that. Also, I think with all the bad things that have happened in my life, and I'm not here for a pity party or anything like that, but I have been through challenges in my life. I have experienced some difficulties, but I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I hadn't have been through those challenges and difficulties. So if I could go back in time and people just ask me, would you take those pains away? Well, if I could end up exactly as I am now without all those pains, then yeah, of course I would. But more than likely, if I didn't have those pains, if I didn't have those challenges, if I hadn't experienced those losses and rejections, then I wouldn't be who I am now. I never could be who I am now. And I like who I am now. I don't think I'm the best I could be, but I think I'm pretty good. I'm good enough. I can accept myself as I am, but I can also know that I can be better. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's an important dichotomy to have as far as I am good enough the way I am, but I also would like to be more than I am and be more than I was yesterday. So that's perspective. The last thing I would say, or the last of the S, stands for service. And we could take those pain points that we just mentioned related to perspective. We can go, okay, well, how could I turn this into a service? I just had the other day, I did a podcast with one of the most inspirational people that I've ever spoken to, a gentleman with young onset dementia. And I've never heard anybody turn something that most people consider to be one of the scariest things. People are more scared of dementia than they are cancer. But instead, he turned this round being, I didn't know what I was going to do when I retired. But now I feel my life has a purpose because I'm going to educate people and help people to understand more about dementia. And it's suddenly like he'd gone through the whole GPS process of the fact that he'd found things he was grateful for. He'd changed his perspective of what he was going through. And he'd realized that what he was going through was providing a service to others, and that he could offer and contribute something from the challenges that he was facing into something that could help others. And I think that's so empowering. By taking control of the thing that you can't control, you control the things that you can. And he had an amazing spirit for life his hunger and passion and spirit for life is greater than most people who are young and think they're going to live forever. And it's amazing how our own mortality can sometimes spur us on to be greater than we were yesterday. But providing that service, a sense of worth, a sense of value, a sense of contribution, that my life may matter to others, that I'm doing this thing and going through this hardship, but it's actually going to help others in the long term, I think can make a real difference to how our mindset is towards those difficult and challenging circumstances. So I know it isn't always as easy as that. I know many people out there may be going through real difficulties and burnout and trauma and struggling on a day-to-day. And this isn't to say that we shouldn't then reach out for help and ask for support. But even then, it can be done with an element of, I'm finding this more difficult than I know how to. I don't have the resources and knowledge or ability to be able to do this. That doesn't mean I'm not good enough. It just means that this is too difficult and I need some help. I've met some amazing people on my podcast. I listened to the interview with Charlie Beswick, whose son has severe disabilities, physical and intellectual disabilities. But her perspective is exactly the same. She's taken that and she turns it into something to help others, where she helps other parents who are going through similar things to learn the things through her mistakes rather than having to make them themselves. And she was inspiring. And that's what I love about what this podcast offers, that hopefully offers some inspiration and it offers some GPS for all of you out there. So hopefully you can take this, write GPS somewhere up on your board today, put it on your fridge, gratitude, perspective, and service. And anytime you're dealing with something challenging, difficult, anytime you're feeling low, maybe look at those 3 letters and see if you can figure out how you could change your perspective, your gratitude, and your idea of service to help you to overcome that challenge.